Recording stopped. Recording in progress.
All right, you ready to rock and roll? Good evening, everyone. Wednesday, October 23rd. Welcome to a regular meeting of the Programs and Services Committee. We are being video and audio recorded, as usual. Here at the start of the meeting, I'm Josh Princeman, Chair of the Committee from Ward 4. We have Councilor Julian Maliki, Councilor Alan Lobovitz, Councilor Stephen Farrell. Online, we have Councilor Bill Humphrey. Right? Okay. Tonight's going to be relatively quick, I think. So let me introduce the first item, which is item 389-24. This is authorization to acquire the Christina Street Bridge land. If I'm not mistaken, here to present to us, we have Barney Heath and Jen Mark.
That's correct. We're pleased to be here at this point tonight. I think most of you are familiar with the subject we're going to introduce tonight. So thanks to Jen's very capable project management skills, we're at a good point in the project, and I think she's got a presentation.
Yep. So I think most of you are familiar with the bridge, but I just want to cite the bridge a little bit in terms of our bicycle pedestrian transportation network. And here is a rendering of what it could look like. So the Christina Street Bridge is over to the east of Needham Street, just adjacent to the DCR Blue Heron Trail there next to Needham. We'll take a look at the trail network in the next slide. So the Christina Street Bridge will extend some trail and shared use connections and quiet connections. So over on Needham, the orange line there is the DCR Blue Heron Trail. The purple line is the Christina Street Bridge. The yellow line at the top is the Upper Falls Greenway, which goes from the river all the way up to the new TV station area. And the green line there are proposed connections from the approved Northland Charlemont 40B across over into the other Northland development to connect to the Upper Falls Greenway. Go ahead to the next slide. VHB, our consultant in 2021 completed a feasibility study that included extensive public outreach. They came away with the preferred design being a new single span prefab truss bridge. So the current condition on the left here in the slides, you can see that a lot of those supports are broken off. In the middle, you can see the edge there, and then the planned rendering on the right. So we currently have a $1.25 million ARPA earmark through the 2022 economic development legislation. That's through DCR. The funding must be committed by December 31st, 2024. That funding will fully fund the design and the land acquisition we need from the Berry Price Center, which we'll talk about in a minute. And then future funding opportunities to fund the demolition and construction of a new bridge. We have the TIP as a possibility. We have a MassDOT project number. The estimated federal participating construction cost is $4.8 million. And also there are some mitigation funds that could be available from the two Northland developments and some other area projects as well. So we are here tonight to look at a land acquisition that's necessary to provide us access or to provide the community access to the eventual Christina Street Bridge, the new bridge. So the Berry Price Center is here on the left. That's their parking lot. And we've been working on a friendly land acquisition with their board for the last year and have negotiated a $430,000 price, which again, we will be able to pay for fully with the $1.25 million ARPA earmark. We're looking at an 11,210 square foot parcel that will give us not just access to the bridge, but also give us some space for something like a park. Our consultant that we are working with on the design, VHB, is going to provide us with two options for something that would be a good fit for that area in Newton. Here, this image shows the connection to the Northland Charlemont project. It will, you can see the bridge there at the bottom, the proposed land acquisition, and then connecting to the sidewalk shared use network that will go up to the north, and then you'll be able to cross Needham Street at Charlemont. Around the land acquisition, tonight we're here at Programs and Services. On Monday, we're at Finance Committee. And then subject to City Council approval, the Law Department will move forward with the land acquisition. And then VHB is just beginning their work, their design work, and there will be extensive public outreach beginning in 2025 for the actual bridge project.
All right. Thank you. Appreciate that. Let me see what questions there are from committee members, and then if there's mine haven't been asked, I'll come back to me. Councilor Humphrey.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was going to move approval on this item. I guess it's been about 4 or 5 years that I've been kind of running point on this from the council side, and trying to put together public and private dollars from a whole range of sources to make this happen. And this is a key step in that process. And so I'm, looking forward to moving this along.
Okay, thank you, Councilor Humphrey. Let me see what questions there are, and then I'll come back to you for the motion if that's okay.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just curious, and Bill probably knows then, is Needham contributing anything to the cost?
So the town of Needham, to my knowledge, obviously staff can answer this as well, has not been interested in really participating, but there are some caveats there. So there are probably going to be some private sources from the Needham side that will help out. So it's not entirely a Newton-driven project. And so far, the funding, aside from staff time, the funding is coming from non-city sources so far, and I think that will continue to be the case. So the city is sort of facilitating this happening and actually making sure that it does happen, but it's not exactly a city project in the sense that you might be thinking. So it's not like we're just picking up the tab unilaterally on something that Needham is refusing to participate in. And again, there are town of Needham private property owners that are very interested in this, and have been having lots of productive conversations over the years with them about it.
And I meant to check, but I gather, so this is not in the CIP then, because we're not spending any city money that we know of yet?
Well, I think it got added to the CIP, and I think it was in the one that we just had because Mr. Yo mentioned it the other night, in fact. And we do have items, even ones that are entirely state projects, do get listed in our CIP, even if it's,
Funding, yeah.
What's that?
In the CIP, but not as something, the funding sources would be coming from outside the city, it sounds like.
I guess Mr. Yo can answer that.
Sure. Let me just first say that we've been joined by Councilor Lyle Baker, who's also a member of the committee. Mr. Yo, do you want to speak to the CIP question?
Hi, good evening. Thank you. And thank you, Councilor Humphrey, for your work on this project to get us this far. Yes, it's in the CIP. We do have some state-funded projects or state projects that are in the CIP. This is one where we've definitely expended staff effort to make happen over the last several years. And so we thought it was important to list it. TIP funded projects, which we certainly hope this will be, similar to like the ComAv carriageway restoration in Auburndale, are things that where the city has taken and pushed forward, and then the state has constructed and completed the project. We certainly hope that's what happens here. In this case, thanks to Ruth Balzer, we were able to get sizable state grant funding, earmark funding to do design and this acquisition. So we're using other money. We have met with the town of Needham several times. They are supportive. They have not rushed forward with a check for it themselves, but they certainly understand the dynamics. And as Councilor Humphrey said, we are working with some private entities on the Needham side that have, I think they have mitigation money from their development. There have been a number of big projects over there on that side of the river recently, and they're looking for nice projects to help invest in the area. And this is certainly a way for both employees and or people who live on that side of the river to come over to the new Northland development and come to Northland. So this is a win-win for both communities, and we think for the state as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Elsa.
Yeah, I was also curious, so the other side of the land is owned by DCR, we're gonna own this land, is it advantageous? Do we like the idea of who the city of Newton owns it as opposed to somehow DCR being the owner instead of us?
Yeah, I don't know that we've gotten that far with the conversation with DCR. I think the acquisition part was on us. I don't know if at some point in the future, they could be enticed to own the property. I don't know what their
Yeah, we
current
haven't-
thinking is.
Yeah, we haven't
So-
made it that far yet.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right, I'm just wondering, I don't know, that might be sort of,
Personally, I would probably prefer to have the city hang on to it just because having, I'm a board member of the Friends of Hemlock Gorge, and that's a DCR property. And like, they're a huge state agency that's trying to manage property all over the state. And it's the type of thing where if something needs to be addressed, it's going to probably fall through the cracks for a long time if it's DCR land, whereas we can go out and fix it, that day. So that'd be just my recommendation, is we probably want to hang on to it.
thanks.
I'm going to come to Councilor Fallon in just one sec, but let me follow on that question and sort of ask it the opposite way. My understanding is that the bridge is still owned by DCR, and the bridge will continue to own that even after the rehab project. Is there any discussion of either the city or jointly with Needham taking over responsibility for the bridge?
That is to be determined as well.
Well, am I correct that DCR is going to continue to own the bridge, at least the plans at the moment?
That's the part that's to be
Okay.
decided. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, one of the issues from the beginning of the project was trying to figure out who even owns the bridge before any of this. And that was kind of that was kind of an ongoing nightmare because somebody had not filed paperwork properly at the deeds office like decades ago on something. And so there was just this endless bureaucratic loop of trying to figure out who owns it and eventually sort of persuading the state to take custody of it, whether or not it was actually theirs to begin with. So that sometimes happens occasionally with these rail abandonment things.
Okay. And if you believe that, I've got a bridge to sell you. Councilor Farrell.
Thank you, Chair. Let me just say, everyone that I've spoken with is pleased with this project. There are some concerns within the community. One specifically is what will happen with this piece of land and what sorts of things will be developed there, because they're concerned about encouraging loitering. There are lots of young people who gather on the bridge right now, and it becomes very noisy. So I just share with you that that's a concern in the community. That it hopefully will not be stuff that will encourage people to hang around. Secondly, the crossing of the street, it's a really dangerous part of Christina Street. You've got people coming over a hill basically and downhill going east and coming around a corner going west. So there's concern about what will be done to make it safe passage for both bicyclists and pedestrians. And then finally, people said they hope you will clean out the trees and everything that are in the river right at that point when you're doing it. But most of the people are very encouraged by it, pleased to see that it's going to be renovated and eager to use it. But they do have those concerns, at least that's what I found out at the moment. Thank you.
Councilor Lovett.
Just to follow up, so will the community or particularly people in the neighborhood be involved with decision about or the proposal for the two options?
Yes.
So that's an opportunity for them to elaborate on those issues
Happy to help.
and how the consultants will address them. I think it's a good.
Happy to help organize the community.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
So as I understand it, and someone correct me if I'm wrong here, this item is specifically authorization for the city to acquire the parcel adjacent to the bridge so that we can ensure that the bridge will be used as bike and pedestrian and Newton will have access to it, correct?
Yes.
Okay. I think we're about to get to Councilor Humphrey's motion, but I just want to ask, has there been any discussion about the land taking, about restrictions being included with the land taking? In terms of how the land is used, either in perpetuity or how the land is used for a number of years, or well, let me just ask it that way.
I don't know that there has been specific discussions about it. We've been working closely with Andrew Lee on this. That's an excellent question about whether we want to contemplate restrictions. Did you have anything in mind for that, or just wondering if it makes sense?
The one I have in mind that I do think makes sense is an open space restriction because it counts towards open space requirements. It counts towards, potential, Article 97 questions, things like that. So it would seem to me that the purpose of it would be open space and recreation, and that it might make sense to accompany the land taking with a permanent restriction in that capacity. But, I would want, I assume, legal to weigh in on that. And I'm also, if it would make sense, I'd be willing to sort of, approve tonight subject to second call and have a discussion with legal, which I probably should have had before tonight, and that's my fault. Just to see what type of restriction would make sense. Mr. Yo, do you want to weigh in on that or?
No, I think that makes sense. Certainly, it's the anticipation that this is going to be open space. It's really just for safe passage of pedestrians and, bicyclists across this area. We're certainly planning on having safe crossing of the street, but then we needed to first acquire this land to make this even possible, both from a construction standpoint, but then from an operational standpoint. We couldn't be having people go through the parking lot. So yes, I think the land it's for open space, and we'll talk to law about how that can be worked in.
Okay.
Yeah, I would want to be sure that, as Mayor did, we would be able to add accessible parking. I don't know what the open space restriction does to the ability to add accessible parking.
Good question.
Yeah, I think you're allowed parking for park purposes and whatnot. We'll figure that out, I think. It's good. It's a good point.
Lucy Chansky, I see your hand up. We're not doing public comments. If that was the intention there. Councilor Humphrey, you interested in moving approval, and are you okay with subject to second call so that we can at least discuss potential restrictions on the land?
Yeah, my only thought on that was, I don't think, because what we're being asked to authorize in the motion is the acquisition, the friendly, and it's not like it's a hostile or taking or anything like that. It's a deal that's been worked out, and I don't think there's anything that would stop the city from adding a restriction after the fact. And it's not to say that if we wanted to have a restriction that was some sort of condition on the deal. And it's not something that they've asked for, right? So I'm just, I would be curious what Councilor Baker thinks, because I'm not sure that this needs to be part of this particular motion.
Well, as a general rule, I'm always curious about what Councilor Baker thinks. So I welcome that segue. Councilor Baker.
Thank you, folks. Sorry, I'm operating. I'm recovering from a little surgery, so I'm not there in person, but I'm doing okay. But let me just mention that one of the issues we ran into that's somewhat analogous, we acquired, as you may recall, the Wobbin Hill Reservoir for public recreation some time ago. But as part of that part of that acquisition, it was made subject to a conservation restriction. And because the city is the purchaser, it needed to have someone who can enforce the restriction, because if you're trying to preserve it for posterity as open space, you've got to have someone who has the enforcing capacity. We have the same kind of restriction on the golf course. And in those cases, I think the Newton Conservators has been the body that has had the ability to enforce. So one of the aspects that if you're going to do this, I think, is to just make sure you've got not only the right restriction, but someone who can enforce it against the city, assuming the city is the ultimate holder of this property, as I understand it.
So I guess
Yeah.
my question is, does it have to be part of this docket item or can it be added later?
Well, I think that the practice has generally been to do it at the time, although in the case of the golf course, we thought we'd done it properly and found out it wasn't done, so it was added after the fact. So it can be added after the fact. There's no, as far as I'm concerned, no bar to that. But if you want to do it, you just need to have not only a valid restriction, but one that is enforceable against the city, so that everybody's assured that all of this will work.
Mr. Yo?
Yes, I agree with Councilor Baker. That is the practice. We would have the Newton Conservators do that. I think in timing wise, I don't think we're gonna be able to do it with this. We need to spend this money now.
Yeah, that's part of
and-
my concern here. Is
Yeah.
that we've got this ticking deadline because
Yeah,
the
and
state money was
working
ARPA
things
money.
out with the Conservators and doing the CR is gonna take at least several months. So, I think the anticipation is that we would make this purchase and then work out those details sometime soon.
So if I can make a suggestion, you might want to have the committee, or again, Mr. Yo, you can talk about this possibility, create a parens 2 for this item, just to reference the possibility of a future restriction, because ultimately it needs to be accepted by the city. But at least that would give some comfort perhaps to people who are concerned about it, that there is an item in the pipeline, and then the city would be able to come back to
Makes
deal with
sense.
that at a later time.
Okay.
I like the idea, Councilor Baker. Councilor Humphrey, if that's amenable to you, I'm going to assume that your motion would be to create a parens 2, which is to deal with a conservation restriction on this land, and to report favorably on parens 1, which is the underlying item.
Yes.
I thought that was the motion you're making. Fantastic. Councilor Humphrey has moved approval of parens 1 and creation of a parens 2 to deal with conservation restriction. Any further discussion on that motion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Any abstentions? That's 6-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jen. Thank you, Mr. Yo. Appreciate it. The next item is item 387-24. This is the reappointment of Michelle Freshman to the Health and Human Services Advisory Council. Can I get a motion? Councilor Malky has moved approval.
I was hoping to ask more about what they do, but
Any further discussion? All right, all those in favor, please say aye. Any
Aye.
opposed? Any abstentions? 0. Item 388-24, the reappointment of Sam Figler to the Newton Commonwealth Foundation.
I would move that.
Councilor Baker has moved approval. Any discussion? All those in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed?
Mr. Chairman, I think that's your last item. Before you leave I would just ask a momentary reconsideration of the first item, just because a point of explanation may be necessary.
I think we also need parens 2, going back to it.
Yeah, for the parens 2.
Yeah, so back to 389-24, parens 2, Councilor Baker.
So just to point out that the Conservators has been the enforcing body, but generally requires at least some money in escrow to pay for inspection and enforcement. Because obviously to have the right to enforce, but not be able to inspect. So I think that the administration will need to have some ability, and they may not use ARPA funds for this. It's not a major amount, but I think in the case of the golf course, when we did the restriction, there was a fund set aside so that the Conservators couldn't have the capacity to enforce. Because in order to make the restriction really successful, you've got to have somebody who can do the job, and that involves at least some monitoring and the capacity to bring an action if necessary, which we all expect not to be needed. But My memory is that some funds were set aside in escrow for that purpose. So there may need to be some funding for this.
Yeah.
And that piece not maybe needs to be part of the report, if not necessarily part of the item.
I think that anything like escrow related can't be ARPA money, and I believe this item was just dealing with ARPA money. So
No, I understand that.
yeah.
This would have to be separate after the fact, I think.
Right.
But I don't think I think the administration needs to be just advised that that's important detail when you get to finance. By that time, somebody should be able to solve this problem.
Okay, and this item is going to finance as well, I believe.
Yes.
Actually, Councilor Harper, you're on finance, correct?
Yeah, I'm wondering if it is because just because I don't know that is it if the money's not coming from the city, does it go? That's what I'm not sure.
I thought I saw on the slides from
Oh
Barney.
yeah, it says in the actual docket it says referred to programs and services and finance committees. So okay.
Yeah, which was a typo.
Just not including the referral.
Oh, okay. So it has been referred to.
It has.
Okay, okay. So if you're going to be at that meeting, Councilor Humphrey, perhaps you can bridge the gap between these two committees and maybe do the, sorry. Just explain. I don't get a chance to talk to Councilor Gentile.
Yeah.
And I would just suggest Councilor Humphrey just check in with Mr. Yeo about the escrow issue, because that's you don't want to walk into the council meeting with that issue unresolved. You want to get this done.
Although wouldn't that be a parens 2 related thing?
Yeah, it's parens 2 related. It's just to reassure people. I think that something, if you're setting up a process, you want to make sure that even though it's not going to be done now, there's a process that's going to be successful. So to anticipate the issue, I think, is a wise thing to do, at least to let him know.
Okay. Did you need, Mr. Chairman, do you need a hold on parens 2? Move to hold?
Hold 389-24 parens 2, which we've essentially created here. So yes.
It has to be docketed, but then it's just held in committee. I think you're just docketing it now. I don't think you have to hold it because you haven't created it really.
Don't we create it as a committee when we create a
Yeah,
parens?
you create it now, but I guess a motion to hold doesn't hurt.
Okay. Councilor Humphrey,
Just
hold
be safe.
389-24 parens 2, which may or may not exist. All in favor of hold?
Aye.
Aye.
Right.
Okay. I think that does it. Council Baker, you feeling okay?
Yeah, I'm doing fine. It's just I had a not for advertisement, but a hernia operation.
Recording stopped.
So thank you, Jacqueline. A hernia operation, and it just takes time for that to get put back together.
Well, even on the
So close.
on the IR, you're still the MVP of the committee. So thank you for your help with getting us through that. Appreciate it, and hope you get well soon.
Yeah, no, I'm home. It's just it takes a little time. That's all.
All right, I believe we are adjourned.
Yes.
Yeah.
Thank you all very much.
Check out the PDF.